the marvels of Britain. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Everest Plateau. We are still in the depths of harvest. It is going sort of, it's like elongated.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's about to all...
You think it's all about this?
The numbers are just climbing all together.
Okay. Good.
It's all going to come out at once, I think.
Good. All come out at once. But
all right. We're here.
This week we have Peter with us again, and he's joining us in the middle of the night.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. He's
even later in the night.
I
feel like I've seen behind the scenes, like the real experience, but it's like episode 1.
Yeah. You experienced an episode 1 moment for sure. Delete that. It's all over.
Oh, jeez.
It's only a model.
So last week's episode with the Arthurian legends was fantastic, and I'm excited to see what you said you had a lot more material. So what are you bringing to us today?
Yeah. Well, we're not doing Arthur, so great. We can move straight in.
Damn it!
No. We're going to cover a bit more of the matter of Britain and the history of Britain, and we're going to do basically. I want to go through some things that are part of that wider culture that I talked about Arthur being a part of, and let's have a look at my sherry screen. Yeah, we're going to have another look. So have a look at that culture that Arthur is part of, and kind of some of the interesting things that we get in British archaeology, which should kind of make people from, say, with our point of view, raise our eyebrow a bit. You know, those sort of standard ideas, and and also some other bits that basically I feel like aren't talked about enough. So there's loads of great stuff on YouTube, like or anywhere, you know, either the mainstream academic, mainstream popular, and alternative. There's loads of great stuff about British archaeology online, and like Megalithomania is a great example of that.
Of course,
there's just so much channels covering so much stuff, but I think there's some things that aren't covered enough, and they're the things that I kind of want to have a look at. If I can get this presentation on the screen.
You've done it once before.
There it is.
There it is. Right, here we go. So, we talked about Arthur sort of coming in and out of fashion over the last 1,000 years as people basically used and abused him for their own propaganda. The Tudors were a fantastic example of that, especially Henry VII. And basically, it wasn't just Arthur that was used in this way, but loads of different aspects which are more from this Brythonic tradition rather than the English tradition, we could say. And one example, these chaps here. This is King Lud and his sons, or Llyd in Welsh.
Lud.
Lud, yeah. So Lud is the eponymous founder of London. Ludgate is one of the gates on the old Roman town, and that was meant to be where his hill fort was, which he built. And these statues were put on Ludgate, and actually, not these aren't even the originals. Why these are really interesting is because these guys have gone up and down at Ludgate several times as the culture surrounding them has come in and out of political fashion.
Real quick, we're seeing your. We're not seeing the presentation screen. We're seeing.
Oh, you're seeing that. Oh, it's because it's.
Because I could see when your mouse was going around the guys, it was like way off.
Oh, right.
He's looking at the actual presentation. We're looking at the
Yeah.
whatever you call
The
it.
app. Yeah. Yeah, we're looking at the app.
Oh, it's because
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, it doesn't matter. We can have a look at this anyway. I mean, it'll be
That's
better
fine.
to-
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
it doesn't matter.
Since
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
on the
yeah.
same screen we're on.
I mean, there's some photos that would be better to be bigger, but yeah. Anyway, these are the guys. Anyway, this is his two sons. One of them's called Androgeus, who is sort of related to a historical character called Avarfwi, and even Lud himself is said to be the brother of Caswallon, who's one of the British leaders who resisted Julius Caesar. So again, we've got this sort of mix of the legendary and the historical, or at least accepted historical, seem to be like intertwined. But yeah, I just think it's absolutely fascinating that these guys have gone. These aren't even the original statues. They had one set come up, then they were torn down, then these ones were made to replace them. They've been up and down, and now currently they're in the porch of a church somewhere in London. So it's just really interesting that this stuff has gone kind of like in and out of fashion. And I think these lovely statues of Lud and his sons are a really good example of that.
So,
The statues were built and then torn down. Somebody else built them. Yeah.
put new ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone said
yeah.
it was daft to build a statue here.
These,
But I built it all the same.
The third one stayed up.
That's what you're going to get, lad.
So
Sorry.
I did have a question about Lud. Is his name also the origin of the word Luddite? Are those connected as well?
do you know what? I've actually researched this and I've completely forgotten because it's the middle of the night. I have actually done this research before because I'm really interested in word origins and things like that.
Yeah, I feel if it seems familiar, but I don't. Was it an area? Well, I don't want to guess. Maybe Kyle can look it up, but
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Let's look it up. Who's looking
now-
it up?
now they're both
So
looking it
there
up.
was a guy called Ned Ludd who was a participant in smashing machinery and things like that.
okay.
But his name
Yeah.
of Ludd is probably from a Welsh or Brythonic tradition of having this name.
All right.
It's interesting how I guess it would have been Ludtown
Yeah,
turned into London.
yeah. So Dun or Din is like a fortified town or something like that.
Ludden.
Yeah, I saw
Ludden.
something.
That's cool.
Somebody had posted that there were all these suffixes to city names or town names in England, and you could know what their origins were based on which suffix they had.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of some problems with that, in as much as sometimes that there may have been an original form to the name and they'll just replace it with their word for it. So the town might be older, but you can trace the origin of the town name, but not necessarily the origin of the town.
Ah,
If that
right.
makes
Okay,
sense,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the toponymy stuff is really interesting, actually, because, again, the whole of Britain would have been Brythonic speaking at one point, and there's no doubt loads of Brythonic names still in modern day England, like Dover, which is right on the channel nearest France, where you do the quick crossing to France. That comes from a word like dufera or something like that, which is water, essentially, is what it means. So it's pretty aptly named there. Or black, it's like the blackness of water. And that route actually is in pretty much so many of the major river names as well in other places. And even John Dee, his surname is probably because he's from the Dee area of Wales. And Dee is Welsh for black or water. So it's all there. You learn these sort of small things and then suddenly the whole thing comes together.
John Black.
John Black. Or he would have been like Johann, probably, rather than John.
But that's almost like John Doe. It's like
It's
it's like hey, by the way, I'm anonymous, right? Like my name's John D.
Yeah.
That's what I was. That's what I was thinking.
It does sound like, yeah. No, I'm just gonna give you my first name, which is the total, like
Yeah.
everyone's named this,
Yeah.
and then my last initial, which is just Doe.
Duh.
Yeah, D. D for Doe.
I mean, I think it was also before real, I mean, having a surname as well is sort of quite a modern concept before people
Right,
have
yeah.
patronymics or like the region where you're from or what your profession was and things like that.
Yep. Smith.
Yeah. So
Yep.
those are the famous patronymics you can think of. Make sense with Welsh. So you have like the name Powell, for instance, comes from Map, which means son of, and Howell, and it's shortened to then just become Powell.
Powell.
Yeah. Or there's other examples. The name Pew comes from Ap Hugh.
Okay.
So map is, or map or mab in Welsh is like Mac in Irish, meaning son of. So MacDonald is son of Donald.
Okay.
So it's all the patronymic system was really popular in the Celtic world, we could say.
I just came up with a new slur. Not gonna say it,
Don't say it.
but I'm totally using Mac. It's been introduced into my. Yeah. Anyways, nobody's gonna know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I just thought of it. Yep. It's good. But we'll leave it as an exercise for the audience. You guys should be able to figure this out.
So we've had Lud and his sons, and now we've got a load of other these characters who border historical and legendary. I'm not going to read it out. You know, it's there for people to see. We'll definitely cover some more Brutus at some point. The other point of this slide as well is to demonstrate how many of these like heroes there are in Welsh tradition, right from the earliest days. Brutus, 6th century AD or 6th century BC or 12th century BC, right through to like Nestfurt Rhys, known as the Helen of Wales. She married like so many different lords because of basically who her father was and what they would have got by being with her and having heirs with her. So you have these so many figures. The idea of inventing Arthur seems completely, why bother? It seems unnecessary for the Welsh to invent their heroes because they're quite happy to mythologize the ones that they already have.
That were real.
That were real, yeah. So why then tend towards
That's a
pure
good point.
invention?
I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean-
okay, but you don't need to read this stuff, but at least tell me that you said Nestfurt Rhys, is that what you said?
Yeah.
And then how do you pronounce the one above that? Belly
The god.
Belly
Mauer.
Belly Mauer.
Okay.
Mauer.
God of ancient Britain.
Mauer
And then-
meaning the great.
Ah, okay. And
And
then
he's
lower
associated-
left,
got
Cod.
Cadwallader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cadwallader.
Yeah, it means battle leader. Cad meaning battle, Wallader meaning something like leader. It's similar to the Norse like Valdar, or even Vlad possibly. Anyway, so that's them. So one thing we talked about quite a lot last time. I think I sort of made lots of general references to this, but I kind of wanted to make it a bit more succinct. Is that when we get to this time of Arthur, there seems to be a lot of people who like to frame it to create a story with certain oppositions, which I think are false oppositions. One of them is like an idea of Roman versus Celtic. That people like the idea of the friction between these two worlds. But it's my firm belief that by the time we get to Arthur, you actually have a really interesting synthesis of Celtic and Roman. Another one is Christian versus pagan. which is kind of on the same lines of the Roman versus Celtic. There's,
Yeah.
it's a really nice story that people like to play out, whether they, like to show Arthur as a Christian king who's converting pagans, or the other way around, as a pagan king who's resisting the change of Roman Christianity. That's stories that people like, but I don't think they stand up to scrutiny when you look at the archaeology and the written records. The other thing, which I think is a bit of people like to line up as an exclusivity, and I don't think they're exclusive at all, and that's the idea of a historical Arthur and a mythical or cosmic Arthur. I'm quite open to the more metaphysical ways of looking at Arthur, but they are not exclusive with the idea of a historical 6th century king.
Sure.
I think one of the interesting things to do is to really fully understand that historical king. So then, when you've got all the data that's left over, you look at that and think, well, what's this trying to tell us? This is telling us about the 6th century king. What are all these stories telling us? Are they ancient stories that are, could tell us something even more important about ourselves, maybe? So yeah, I don't like the idea that there is a historical Arthur, but no mythic or metaphysical implications, or the other way around. I don't think they're exclusive ideas. And another exclusive thing is this idea of the regional Arthur as well, versus a national Arthur. So a lot of people like to find Arthur in a certain area, whether it's because that's where they're from in the country, or whether their research has led them there. And then once they sort of centre on that one sort of area, they then go looking for everything else, all in that area. And sometimes you end up with an Arthur who sort of seems to have only travelled less than me or Martin would to go and visit an ancient site.
15 miles.
15 miles tops. And somehow he gets remembered. Somehow Arthur gets remembered as the king of all Britain. It doesn't make sense. And this doesn't mean we won't find Arthur in some sort of region, that he wouldn't have had his own local sphere of influence. But, for me, it's not a question of the national or the regional. I think we have to kind of play both against each other and to understand the full picture. So just to go back, let's have a look at that. So this is really cool. This is the stone I was talking about last week. You can make a very strong argument, and so have many academics for a long time, that this is the gravestone of Sir Tristan. There it is. It's a solid physical object with his name written on it, and a memorial inscription. So these things should be all over, and they should have inscriptions for all the people that we know from this period, all of the knights, all of the characters. And it sounds really kind of... I'm using exciting language there to kind of explode the idea in people's heads, because they are there and they're fantastic objects, but also they kind of show this, again, that these are false oppositions between ideas of Roman and Celtic. So you can kind of just about see it here. We've got a Latin memorial inscription carved on it, but this is a great ugly standing stone,
Yeah.
This is a tradition. Go on.
Is there actually somebody buried beneath it? Have they...
No, because it's very few of them are found in original spots, in original placement. A couple have been found near burials. Some of them, they reckon maybe they could be memorials, but they're not actually near a burial. And they also suggest there could have been at the time a practice of multiple burials as well, especially for very important people.
But that plaque says Tristan here lies.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so hopefully, unless they would write that on something that was just a memorial, which maybe they did, but
it's a classic Latin formula for a memorial, Whether that
Okay. Whether they
it is
actually
to be
lie
seen.
there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but
I
it
gotta-
could be to be taken literally as well.
Sorry, dudes. I have to make a call.
It's raining over there again.
Nope. This is harvest. Like they're freaking. I have to do that. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
It won't take me long. Can we get this full screen so we can see these better?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Can we?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Can we just pause everything?
I can pause everything.
Yeah.
Okay, we are back. So we took a little break.
Yeah.
We had to take a little break. Had to take some phone calls. We
Harvest emergency.
harvest emergency. Same as last show. We were about to pull fruit, and then it started raining. So yeah. Anyways, we're back, and I'm sorry for the interruption, Peter.
No
And
worries.
I had more. Well, so Dirt, while Kyle was making phone calls, we were talking about this. I have more questions about it. Like so why would they write "Here lies a person" on a monument where the person isn't buried beneath it? Even if you were saying like this particular one may have been moved or was not found in its original place, is there a reason why they would do that? Where it's not a lie, but it's sort of like, why would you do this in the first
I mean,
place?
I could be wrong. I think the point I was making is that it's a very standard memorial inscription that you see.
Okay.
And I think maybe I'm being too much like an archaeologist here. Oh my god. I don't think
All right. Show over.
we don't.
Kick this guy off the show.
I think the problem is we haven't found enough of these things next to burials that we can confirm were made at the same time.
Okay.
Right, I think you're making a perfectly reasonable assumption, Russ. I'm gonna go,
Okay.
oh
Yeah,
my
'cause
god, why
if
did you say that? They never find these with bodies.
Yeah, because I mean, we have, enormous cemeteries now, and it says, "Here lies this person,"
yeah.
and that person is actually there.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever seen a stone where it sets up somewhere where you didn't bury the guy, and we're like, "Can you write, 'Here lies this person,' and we're just going to set it up in the field out
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
even though we're burying him over there."
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen now, so there could be a cultural reason or some other thing
Okay.
that I don't know about, but I just do find this interesting that like that looks like a grave marker,
Gravestone,
not a
absolutely.
memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are plenty as well that do not have the formula Hic Jacet, or even any formula. Sometimes they just have a single name on them. Academics generally try to use this as a way of classing them into a certain period. So this one has the Hic Jacet, but it also has the son of element. And sometimes you just get that, just a name, son of this person. Sometimes you get loads of decoration. This one's got a relief cross, T-shaped cross on the back. Some of them have like lots of lines, and as you move through the centuries as well, they become even more elaborate as well with complicated knotwork and stuff. I'm really interested in these really kind of simple ones because of the period that they're from, though.
Yeah. I'd also would bet that thing was a triangle. Like it came to a point
Yeah.
and the top is broken off, and then there's a natural weak part in the stone there, and that caused this other fracture in the middle.
Yeah.
Like it looks like it was actually worked to be a point,
A
very tall pyramid.
You get these faults in the granite which could create this
Yeah.
effect. But absolutely. And pyramid is often a word used by medieval writers to describe pillars.
Ah,
They even call
Wow.
them pyramids.
pyramids.
And I kind of, I wonder if this does like hark back to things like obelisks, and that maybe an obelisk has the same purpose somehow as a pyramid, and then a column can represent an obelisk, and etc.
Right.
etc.
Yeah, that's a very so. What are the rough dimensions? Do you know, like how big it is?
Yeah, this one is probably about 6 feet high. It's on a. It's hard
Okay.
to say because this one's on a plinth as well. Some of them,
Okay.
some of them are massive, and some of them are a lot smaller. um, I mean, so many of them look like completely unworked rock, and they're just gone right. We'll have that one. And so the dimensions have any, that's what really strikes out like a standing stone to me, because standing stones, as whether they're part of a circle or a row or by themselves, there's no set rule for size. Some of them in this country
Yeah.
are tiny, and some of them are absolutely huge.
Right.
And the same goes for these things as well. There is that, there is a similarity there. Maybe a bigger one does suggest you're a more important person, and we're back onto Sigmund Freud again. I don't know. And then, hopefully not. And then, I'm just gonna totally tangent myself here.
That's fine. We're in the tangent cube.
We're in the tangent
Totally
cube. But getting back to your original point, talking about burying people with something that says "Here lies." I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but here, when you consecrate a churchyard, it ultimately means it doesn't matter where someone's buried. So if you need to reorder a churchyard, you can dig people up and then bung them in any hole, and it's fine.
Okay.
We do still have lots of gravestones that say "Here lies," but there's probably no one under them. And this obviously comes from as well the antiquity of some church sites. They've been used as places of burial for over 1,000 years. So things have been moved around, and not to mention the fact that they've been burned down by, Saxon pagans or Viking pagans or even other Christians. And in fact, this is one thing that we should get onto is early Christianity in Britain, and how that could, we were trying to work out on why people might try and hide the story of Arthur, and one possible way in is to do with the antiquity of British Christianity, basically. And we've definitely had a lot of destruction of Christian monuments and Christian sites in this country that have not been at the hands of pagans. It's been at the hands of Christians, and that's
Right.
a story right across Europe. I mean, so does that lead us on to So I think I sort of suggested last time that the traditional date of I say traditional, not traditional at all. The mainstream academic date for Christianity arriving in Britain is like sometime in the 3rd century, so in the 200s, and they talk about it coming over with Roman traders in a sort of kind of vague way, which of course is not attested anywhere historically. No one has written down, oh, Christianity arrived by traders in the 3rd century. It's an assumption made from the archaeology, because that's basically when we start to see recognisably Christian imagery and things like baths that look like they're designed for baptizing and things like that. And as I say, clearly Christian imagery, mosaics with images of Christ, mosaics with crosses. But the histories tell a number of different stories. And I'm going to sort of start with the most well-known one and then sort of go through a few. So the most well-known one is Joseph of Arimathea.
Right.
He was said to arrive in Britain after the crucifixion. He arrived at Glastonbury and was donated 12 hides of land by the king there. Now, this is a very, should we say, well-transmitted story, so I don't want to go over it too much. But one thing that I think isn't said enough is that the king who was said to give him the lands, was a very much historical first century British king, and probably a Roman client king, but he's well described in the British literature as a local king. And he's called Arviragus, and we've got Arviragus on the right here. This is him embracing the Emperor Claudius, because they had a very, very close relationship, and Arviragus apparently married one of his daughters, which could be very important in the Christian story as well, because she might not have been his daughter, but his ward, which he acquired elsewhere. Moving a bit forward on, so Joseph of Arimathea would be something like 38 AD or something, which is really interesting, because Gildas says that Christianity arrived in Britain in the last year of Tiberius, and this Tiberius could be, I think it's Claudius as well. Tiberius is one of his names, so that really dates it to 38 AD. The next one we have here is, in the bottom in the middle, is King Caradoc. And King Caradoc is, again, very much historical king of Britain. He's called Caractacus by the Romans. And he fought the Romans in southeast Wales with the Silurians, who we will talk about with Arthur in the future. And Caradoc's interesting because when he was eventually captured, and he wasn't really captured by the Romans. He fled to another British royal called Cartimandua, and she actually turned him in. And he, rather than being like executed on the spot, which was pretty much standard at the time, like when Julius Caesar. Well, that's probably an association.
Okay.
He'd like it. When Julius Caesar, JC. When he, I don't even know why I'm talking about Julius Caesar. Oh yeah, when he beat the Gauls, Vercingetorix, who was their leader, he was basically brought before Caesar, and he was executed on the spot. Caractacus, for some reason, was taken to Rome, and he was allowed to appear in front of the Senate, and he made a speech, and basically the speech was, I'm going to very heavily paraphrase, but it doesn't add to Rome's greatness to have me executed, but it does add to your greatness to keep me alive as a prize, basically. It's more complicated than that, but that'll do for this time of night. And they loved it. He was pardoned, and not only was he pardoned, but he had a villa built for him, and him and his family lived in Rome. But it's said at that point that either his son or his father, there's a bit of confusion with Bran, but Bran the Blessed, as he's known, basically took Christianity from Rome and then brought it back to Britain. But still, we're talking about very early days. We're talking about 60 AD, first century Christianity in Britain.
So would they have been considering this guy like a barbarian king that they captured in some distant land and they brought back as a prize? And then he's like, yeah, keep me alive.
Yeah,
Is that kind of what's going on?
How
did he talk to them?
That is an excellent question. Excellent question.
I'm presuming he didn't speek Latin or whatever.
Some people pick up languages real quick.
That's true.
Let's go back a couple of slides. We're going forward. Spoilers.
That's forward, yeah.
I was like, damn, how much did I miss? I must have been thinking about something else.
So, here we go. Jumping backwards and forwards. On the right here, these are old maps, okay? So there will be updates, but the concentration is sort of the same. So this is sort of like a concentration of Roman finds in Britain, okay? Okay. Coin finds and things will spread out more into South Wales and down here as well. But this is generally a concentration of Roman stuff. In the middle, this is the coin minting tribes of pre-Roman Britain. Okay, and you can see there's a sort of similar distribution.
distribution pathway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are generally seen, as well as a lot of the coin minting, to start around about the same time as, or just before, or just after Julius Caesar's invasion. So, before Claudius and Caractacus, we've had 100 years since Caesar invaded, or tried to invade, at least, anyway. So there has been at least that amount of contact. And one king, known as Cynvelyn in Welsh, or Cunobelinus in Latin, he was known as a very Romanized king of Britain. He had a really good relationship with Rome, and like Roman stuff and things like that. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that a British king may have learned Latin. However, there might be some other possible reasons for his being able to speak to them. There is certainly no mention of a translator in the records. Right.
Okay.
And here, this lovely picture of this church. This is called, so I sort of missed one out, and this is called St Justin Roseland. Where I sort of southwest of the country where I live, we have lots of stories concerning what they call Jesus's missing years, where he's said to have travelled to various places, and one of them is Britain with Joseph of Arimathea. And this is St Justin Roseland, where Jesus was meant to have arrived as a child. He came up the creek, and then he came off the boat, and then he immediately met with some of the local Druids, and apparently they were very impressed with him. So, and we've got a number of these stories as well. Another not so well known one is that Joseph of Arimathea also has like a Welsh version. That's not the best way of putting it. He's known as St Illyd in Wales, basically, but we don't often hear about, when you hear about people talking about in Joseph of Arimathea, they kind of miss out on the Welsh stuff. Now, Illyd is a bit of an odd one. It is used in Welsh tradition to refer to Joseph of Arimathea. There's a poem about him bearing Christ off the cross. But there are a number of churches dedicated to St Illyd in southeast Wales, and one of them in particular has a very interesting earthwork in it, a circular earthwork, which has been described by many antiquaries and alternative historians as being a 1st century church or oratory. And certainly for the early churches, the Welsh used this word cor, which is from like circle. And they talk about the fact that they worshipped outside as well. The impressive thing about the cores as well is they call them the perpetual choirs, and basically at all times there would be monks singing, and then they would be replaced, and they would have literally 24-hour-a-day worship at these cores. It's absolutely fascinating stuff.
Imagine singing for...
Right.
That would be amazing.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So, just to like kind of build a bit of context, I want to talk about some various parts of British history. I want to go through some of these, our standardized archaeological ages, and just pick out some points of interest, and hopefully it will hopefully, if I've done this presentation right, it will link back to all these things that I've brought up in the beginning. At least that's how it seemed earlier. I mean, so I haven't got anything really on the Paleolithic, which is a bit of a shame, because we have some amazing sites of going back like hominid tool sites and things like that, which go way, way back.
What's the oldest human artifacts found in Britain?
Well,
do you know?
I mean, there's definitely tools which are not human, so to speak. They're not Homo sapiens.
Homo sape.
Yeah.
So hundreds of thousands of years.
As I just said, Russ, I'm not going to go into this, so I haven't done this. I mean, I know where I live in Devon is probably one of the most continuously occupied parts of the country for like tens of thousands of years. They've got finds going back a long way. as well. Some really cool stuff, and it's not something you see discussed very often, because a lot of these finds were made 100 years ago. You know,
right.
This is kind of, these are the finds that built our current understanding, and now like all the new finds people are making, you know, the scientists are kind of like checking it back against this stuff. So it's things that are worth exploring, because also antiquarians made kind of weird mistakes. So I think it's worth people with critical minds going back and looking at this stuff, you know, especially when they found like a pinky and they're like, oh yeah, this was definitely this human, you know.
Right. Yep.
I mean,
I think there were some in forbidden archaeology too.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but like you're saying, it's 150 years ago, and like no one looks at this information anymore. And if they did, they would just be like, "That's too old. They must have made a mistake."
Yeah, and you know, and it's what a lot of our understanding is built on. So it's really important to have a look at that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
The Mesolithic.
I just put these up on the screen actually as well, because like obviously each country and each like national discipline of archaeology will have slightly different dates for ages and things like that. So I just wanted to flash them up, so if I'm talking about a certain period, people can kind of go back and have a look and sort of cross-reference that against some numbers that they understand, if that makes sense. Especially things like the Bronze Age is kind of different compared to the Middle East and Western Europe. It's all off by a bit. So, Neolithic. Talk about lost civilization. I mean,
recognize that place.
Yep. Looks very familiar.
Yeah. So, I mean, the henge builders are even, as Martin likes to call them, they're even kind of like in the middle of the Neolithic, and we'd already had, you know, a long period of like really odd giant earthwork monuments being built, or even started, you know. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about too much about it. The Neolithic of Britain was one of these things in the past that was kind of like a not very popular and under-investigated topic. In the last like 20, 30 years or so, the public's interest in the Neolithic has exploded, and I think that's a really good thing. And I mean, I think even since Martin did his talk, all three of these henges are now basically in public ownership, where before they were in private ownership. So you know, this is a good thing. It means that these sites will actually be studied and have their narrative created as well. But we won't go into
That's right.
Why I picked this as well, because there's one thing about the Neolithic that that I don't think gets talked about enough, and that's Zodiac building. So when Martin first started posting on the Discord about Thornborough and saying, "Hey, do you think this could be like part of a wider star map? Do you think it's just this bit, or do you think that maybe like the Devil's Arrows might be another star?" I was fully behind him already, because I'd already encountered work on ground zodiacs, and the one that needs to be talked about, because I've stolen a picture from his book, is an acquaintance of mine, Hugh Evans. He's got his own channel, books out, The Origin of the Zodiac. His investigation is in a place in northwest Wales called Gwynedd. It's like where some of the biggest mountains are in Britain. Absolutely fantastic place, national park. He basically posits that the Neolithic monuments in the area, alongside geographical features, overall build up a model of the Zodiac. Okay.
Wow.
Because of
a mix of natural and man-made features that then build like a. Okay. Wow.
So this is one reason why he thinks it's the origin of the Zodiac, because of the fact that sometimes geographical features have been chosen. So you know how, for instance, some some of the constellations, they seem to pick strange stars, like stars which kind of aren't as bright as other ones in the area. And there doesn't seem to be any reason for the selection. Well, Hugh would argue it's because there's something on the ground in Gwynedd, which is why they've picked that star. You're right. Now,
that's cool.
I don't want to go into all the mapping and stuff because that's Hugh's domain, and he's got loads of great stuff on it. His book Origin of Time is fantastic. But one thing I will talk about is the kind of the literary tradition, which is compelling about this. So in the Book of Enoch gets taken somewhere wonderful by Uriel, and he's shown the movement of the planets and explain the movement of the planets, so he can see into the future and etc. And he maps the courses of the stars. In Islamic tradition, Enoch is also called Idris. In Welsh tradition, Idris is a giant who sits in his throne above Gwynedd, where he mapped the stars.
What? Wow.
Right? This is Kader Idris, the throne of Idris.
Yeah, that's wild. Holy shit.
So yeah, this is Kader Idris, and this is the peaks mapped out, and as you can see, it very much resembles the old plough, the Big Dipper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. On this part, but he's put coloured crosses because the peaks are actually different. They're named after different colours, and Enoch even talks about the different mountain colours of mountain peaks that he sees, and they're the same colours. And there's all sorts of other interesting information, like Enoch describes how many hours of daylight there are, and it matches Gwynedd's latitude. So it's mind blowing. It really is.
Wow.
But that's Hugh's work. Yeah. Go and we'll put a link in the show notes for Hugh's work.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, so when Martin came to me and said, "Do you reckon this could be some part of something bigger?" I was like, "Hell yeah, hell yeah!" I'm sure. And we've got another one at the moment. So kind of, I don't know if you knew when he first started looking at this, but in the 80s, two chaps called Wilson and Blackett, I mentioned, they were the chaps who made the documentary King Arthur Conspiracy that hooked me onto the Silurian Arthur. And they investigated a number of two ground zodiacs, and I've just got some snippets from one here. We got this kind of cross shape here, which is made out of these are dolmens. All these marks. I think this is a cut mark stone here, but this is a dolmen. This is a dolmen. This is a dolmen. This is a very ancient church. This is St. Helena, who went on a mission to recover the cross of Christ. She was the mother of Constantine the Great, who's very much associated with Britain. He declared his emperorhood, his bid for emperorhood in York, in northern Britain. In British tradition, she's also the daughter of a British king, Coil. So, and of course the mainstream say this is a load of rubbish, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so here she is depicted with the cross, as being part of Deneb, or the Northern Cross. Have I got that right? Deneb? Anyway, the Northern Cross. And yeah, they matched it to this shape here. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of information on their West Welsh zodiac. But what is important to link is it's definitely made up of monuments that we would consider from this Neolithic period. However, the tradition did not end there. So the Bronze Age of Britain.
Look at those. Yeah.
Firstly, we get fantastic.
Constellation is Cygnus. Deneb is the brightest
yes.
star.
Right. Thank you. Deneb's the star in Cygnus. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the Bronze Age. So we don't really get any. We don't seem to get any history directly from the Neolithic. There might be some odd stories that can help us understand the monuments and their functions, but there's nothing like we don't get names of kings or anything like that. Now, despite it, as I said a number of times in the last one, despite it being the so-called prehistoric period, we do actually have information about the British Bronze Age. Now, maybe I'm glossing over something, in as much as we have lists of kings, and people have done work guessing, how many years of reign or how many years per generation, and then calculated it back to the Bronze Age. So
Yeah.
I don't want to mislead anyone here and just say, yeah, we've got Bronze Age history. It's more like this is a calculation back. But where it starts is with someone called Albine, and this is just normally dismissed as sort of an excuse of eponymous naming, that the old name for Britain, Albion, comes from this Queen Albine. The really interesting story is that she comes from the Middle East. She's the daughter of a king called Dungi or Shulgi, who is a historical figure. Although some people would, argue about the spelling of the name and things like that. But she had I think it's something like 30 sisters or something like that in the story, and they're all married off to these various vassal kings. And Albine decides she doesn't like her husband, so she murders him. And she gets her sisters to do the same. And then her father is pretty annoyed about this, as you can understand. So they get on a boat and they go to the other side of the known world. They come to Britain. And it is her descendants who are the giants who Brutus is said to have...
Wait, she got her 30 sisters to all kill their king husbands?
Yeah, I mean, I am paraphrasing.
That would be
so.
I know, but I'm just saying that would be a mass. If I was the dad, I would be pretty pissed about that.
I know,
too.
especially if they were like his allies and stuff,
Yeah, they're like, all of my vassal you killed them all?
I mean, that's what you have to go so far away.
That would be a disaster, yeah.
But it's an interesting time because, a couple of scholars independently from each other place her around 1600 BC. And this is kind of like where we move into the Middle Bronze Age in Britain. So we do have an archaeological shift in this period. The physical stuff changes. So it's kind of interesting that at this time that, that we can work out this person might have arrived. We do have a change in material culture. But the Zodiac building continues. So Wilson and Blackett, who I mentioned earlier, who thought they discovered this one in West Wales as well, with it made up of dolmens and Neolithic things, the first one they actually found was in southeast Wales, and it started by when they were researching Babylonian cosmology, and they started noticing a very strange correlation between the names that the Babylonians gave to their stars and the names of certain Bronze Age mounds in their local area. Like the Welsh names of them. So they don't sound the same, but when you translate them, it means the same thing.
Right.
They started building up a picture very slowly, and they seem to have a functioning model. Problem with Wilson and Blackett is that they put their fingers in so many pies that sometimes they start a really good piece of work and then go, no, we need to move on to this. So they've got quite a few half-finished things, and the Zodiac kind of went a bit quiet until a friend of mine, Steve Willits, he couldn't really go looking at ancient manuscripts and stuff. So just like me, who got interested in the mining stuff, he just wanted to look at the stuff in his local area, and he was reading in their books about these mounds, and he thought, well, one of these is just behind my house. I can just go and have a look. And of course, this was the beginning of an addiction for Steve, and he started working on taking their work and building on it, even finding things which didn't quite work with theirs, and then he'd make a discovery where not only could he give the correction, but he could also explain why they'd made their mistake. Because of maybe confusion with a different constellation or a different star or something.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Wow.
And this is built up from not only... So this is his little drawing on the side. It's built up not only of the archaeological monuments, so the actual Bronze Age mounds, but also from place names and the various stories they associated. What's really interesting as well is that Steve is certain that it's a particular, like, Babylonian zodiac as well. Like, he can almost date it by the choice of the names of the stars and the choice of which stars and which animals, you know, and which images are used to represent it. Like, he's got that much detail. He's got thousands and thousands of names and corresponding bits of data. It's absolutely incredible.
That's amazing.
So the suggestion is that the source was Babylon.
Yes. However,
Okay.
because we have another zodiac in the north of Wales 1,000 years beforehand, it's Steve. His opinion, and I think this is probably right, is that we have to think about it as a back and forth. That these people weren't just coming over once and then staying here or going back and staying there. That the pan-Mediterranean, pan-European travel and exchange of ideas has actually been happening for a lot longer than we generally give it credit for.
Okay.
You know, which makes sense. I mean,
Do you think that can happen on a scale that's just like a few small, like, groups of people that are
absolutely
big time adventurers? It's like not the entire civilization is
No.
doing like massive trade, but there's just like maybe a culture of like adventurer types
Yeah.
that end up doing a lot of this travel. So you see what I'm saying? Like, you can share ideas.
Yeah. I mean, Steve said that only one person with one book really needs to get through. Maybe not even with a book. Only one person, really.
But they also have to be incredibly influential to get
Absolutely.
like an entire map across the landscape to be
Absolutely.
named or things built and all that. So it's like you have to have a very special one person.
Absolutely.
But if there was a culture of like adventurers that isn't necessarily like we're going to open up trade, but just kind of like we're going to the strange world and then we're coming back, and then they over time sort of influence the thinking.
This might help clear things up, is there are also geographical features used in this one. So therefore, for the Babylonians, my idea is that basically people came here in order to construct zodiacs, because there were already people here who had traditions of doing it. I think it was, Britain as a seat of learning for especially the rest of Western Europe is something that arguably goes back into the pre-Roman times. You know, Caesar talks about how all of the aristocracy of Western Europe sent their children to Britain to be educated by Druids. All the Druids of France and the rest of the Celtic world were all trained in Britain. That's written in several Latin books. That's not up for discussion. And I think that possibly goes back a long, long way. And that's what we're
almost
seeing.
It's like the Greeks going
To Egypt
to learn from the Egyptian mystery schools or something. And
Yeah.
wow.
So this one story that
You're going to learn from the Druids, boy.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
This is one that
Hold on, Stonehenge.
I remember really well from Steve, and that is because it just always blows me away. There's a statement in these Babylonian cosmologies, basically, which is about the bull of heaven, so Taurus, and talking about it, the bull of heaven snorting, and it rending a hole in the ground, and this army of soldiers fell into it. Well, where the Taurus is on his zodiac, sort of, pinned down by the stars, where its nose should be is Wales's only hot spring. So that's the steam from the nose, the snort.
Oh.
Just on from the hot spring, there's a gorge, a natural gorge with a river on it. And just beyond that, there's a great big standing stone known as the Stone of the Soldiers.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Dang.
And he's got a story like that for pretty much every start. I mean, it's amazing. We've done loads of interviews with Steve. You can see on the Britain Sin history where he goes into this in much more detail. But he thinks it's also much bigger, and there's bigger stories being played across the landscape as well.
In the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have like the Bull of Heaven being sent down, and then they go and battle it. And
yeah. So, I mean, hopefully
great.
I'm not giving anything away from Steve's work here. I'm pretty sure he said this publicly, but he thinks that the sort of intermixed with aspects of the Zodiac and moving further to the east, I think you can find the Epic of Gilgamesh written out on the landscape.
Wow.
all right, that is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. There's certain instances in Welsh tradition where there's kind of like things going on which are very similar to things happening in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's kind of interesting to think that when that was written in the medieval period, the Epic of Gilgamesh lay forgotten, in a desert in Iraq.
Yeah.
And had been for thousands of years, and so that's pretty interesting. So yeah, and can we just take a little break here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick.
Awesome stuff. We'll be right back.
And we are back. Second break.
Going back to the old school.
It's just old school.
Second?
Yeah.
I'm sure we've had like 5 breaks. And
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
3 phone calls and... Was that last week? I don't remember.
I'm still amazed at this story that these, like, they're princesses basically, right? Murdered all their husbands and came down here, and then they're just like, we'll change the culture. But that would make sense if they brought they have a big influence. They bring a bunch of people. You would presume that they must have brought people with them, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's
It's not
certainly
30 women
implication
traveling
of the
alone.
story is that it's a military migration.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of people, just immigrants, but also that they're coming in force,
Right. Yeah.
which makes me
Like,
think
we'll
they
kill
were
all
well
our
aware
husbands.
of
Now we're taking
what-
your land.
So there is actually a kind of a weird... So generally Albine's presented as a kind of a later medieval English story which doesn't have a Brythonic equivalent. But Steve, again, made a really interesting connection with the story of Hen Wen. And Hen Wen is a giant pig that arrives in Britain and gives birth to a race of giants. Now, Albine is said to have given birth to a race of giants. Albine's name is associated with whiteness, and the Wen in Hen Wen is also to do with whiteness or divinity. So there are these similarities between this kind of very, kind of mythological story with this mass murder going on, but then also the story of Hen Wen is a giant pig who gives birth to giant monsters. So,
Wow.
yeah, but it's kind of interesting to see that there's certain aspects that are reflected in both the English and the Brythonic tradition. I mean, I think it shows that there isn't just some sort of late made up thing, that there might be some sort of authentic tradition buried in there somewhere.
Right, and you mentioned the name Albion,
Yes.
which is like an ancient name for Britain,
Britain,
and
yeah.
you were suggesting that this story was made up after the fact to sort of explain, but it's also possible it came from the other direction, right?
Yeah. So toponymists love to rat on place.
Who?
So the medieval historians loved to explain a place name by making up a story of a person who is named after. So, but it means now that we're in a state where pretty much any story like that is immediately assumed to be rubbish.
Okay.
King Lud of London is one of them.
Okay.
The problem with that is that a massive percentage of Brythonic place names are uncontroversially people's names.
Okay, yeah.
So it seems odd to
Sandwich.
be to go, oh, well, this is just a made-up story to explain the place name. But all of these are genuine and real.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to...
Sandwich is my favorite, I have to say.
Sandwich, yeah. I mean, I'm going to a place... I'm going to see
that place was made by women.
I'm going to go
This
and
whole
see
thing that there was an Earl, some guy, it's a total lie.
I'm sure someone thought of putting something between two pieces of bread before that. Most food is just bread wrapping stuff,
Don't try to diminish the genius creation.
You got to admit it's a good story.
It is a good story. You don't want to get
my
grease on the
version.
cards, but he was happy getting crumbs on the cards,
Yeah.
Proud of that.
Maybe other people did think of it, but they didn't get it named after them. So that's the difference.
I'm telling you, that guy, he stole the invention from his wife.
Been called the Barry Smith. Anyway.
See ya. Anyways, I'll talk to everyone in the comments.
We can make sandwich jokes all day. Okay.
Right.
Let's go.
Okay.
So this kind of just it's explained away as this that this was just a medieval story to create. Maybe it wasn't named after her, but maybe it still represents a general tradition, a real authentic tradition of an influx of people from the Middle East or the Mediterranean at that time. One last thing I wanted to say about Stephen Wilson and Blackett's star map in Southeast Wales is one thing that Steve's done, and it's at the end of one of our videos with him, is that he's taken he's been as conservative as possible and just taken the stars where he is certain that they're there. So there's possibly still some archaeology there, still a mound or cairn there, and it's got a corresponding place name. And then he's laid a modern day planisphere over the top, and pretty much all of them match with, some of them are a tiny bit off. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I can guess that statistically, even just 3 of those lining up with the say random placement of Bronze Age burial mounds on hills would be, it would be statistically astronomical. But for him to have 20 of them that line up bang on is, he's on the way to mathematically proving that it's there. And it's really...
And that's statistically astronomical.
Yeah.
Right.
It's statistically astronomical. It's very astronomical.
And that is... It also it says something very interesting about the people who could do that. I mean,
Absolutely,
you have to map the sky, and then you have to translate
Survey the ground.
survey the ground, and I mean, you're talking about a massive undertaking with a lot of very skilled people.
Yeah. And I think the surveying thing is really interesting, because when you look at the classic work done on ancient metrology by the the British alternative like John Michell or John Neal, I imagine Randall's probably brought those, especially John Michell. I think Randall has definitely brought up before. They all of their work kind of goes to show that ideas of metrology and geodesy were incredibly important to the Neolithic people. And, just, when you think about it, well, they completely mapped Britain and maybe loads of other parts of the world if they were a global civilization. But let's just stick with Britain. Let's say they map Britain. Well, why do they do that? Well, what do they do? Well, if they're trying to build a zodiac, then maybe that's why they're surveying the entire island, because the whole point of having a scale is for accuracy, isn't it? So they know they're going to have to use a huge piece of land, so they want the whole thing properly surveyed before they even begin to start throwing up monuments to mark stars and things like that. So, I don't know. I think that's probably one reason that they were so obsessed with measuring the ground, is so they could then accurately map the stars, as above, so below, and so on.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, the as above, so below. And there's people have done, I mean, Randall's mentioned this too, but people have done work on places like Washington, D.C., for example. They do the same thing. They're mapping this stuff onto the ground, and it's part of the nation building.
Yes.
Right? It's part of the project of we are sort of making this divine symbolism into the country that we are forming.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And that's
I don't know what
it's like a way to make a cohesive culture.
Cohesive culture, but it's also like a sort of almost like blessing it with the stars. Like it's with some eternity. Kind of like you're bringing eternity down to where your people will be.
Mm-hmm.
It is an expression of a kind of divine power.
Yeah.
In the formation of a nation. And so this is very interesting. Like if you're saying that these people came here and they started up this massive project, whoever they were, and then they mapped the sky onto the ground in this period at the very beginning of of what is now considered to be Britain. That's really fascinating. And to have that process repeated, in Washington.
How many are there? I mean, and also that, as you say, it's visible in DC, and it's visible in London and in Edinburgh as well, and
Giza,
but the thing that gets me about London and Edinburgh and DC is that these people seem to be knowing to do this before. There seems to be a continual tradition.
Yes.
That some people in power seem to know about.
Right. They're not making this up on the spot. They're doing this specifically and on purpose because they know that it has an effect.
Yeah.
And it really is interesting.
The fact that it seemed to be doing something that the Neolithic people were doing. They were doing that 100 years ago, say in London, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. But us in the alternative field have only just worked out that the Neolithic people were doing something similar.
Right.
Where's the link? It's very confusing. But I think that. Yeah, I think this is my conspiracy guy going out. I really do think there's people in power in this country who know, well, not necessarily in power, but of powerful families or something like that, who understand a lot more about our ancient monuments than they say.
I agree.
Because of the way they seem to recreate this stuff and roll it out again. I mean,
I agree with that. I mean, we've been talking on this podcast since the beginning of there is clearly secret information that has been hidden in plain sight and passed down between two select people over thousands and thousands of years, but since all the way into prehistory. It comes out of prehistory, and it's still happening today.
Yeah,
it's still being done today, and there are almost certainly there are groups of people today who have had that knowledge directly passed on to them from their forebears who had it directly passed on to them, and you can if you had the information, which probably only they do, you could trace that line all the way back into the mists of time.
Yeah, yeah.
About this kind of stuff, specifically about the symbolism, like, you see these beautiful pieces of artwork and there's obviously symbols all in it, and somebody who knew what to put in there. It's a language.
Yeah.
Randall goes into this all the time. You can sit there and look at these monuments and you can read the symbols in the old books and the monuments themselves. And I agree with you. I think, it's not even really a conspiracy. It obviously is happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But yeah,
Absolutely.
The conspiracy guy's like, why are they keeping it secret?
So one of the most famous land zodiacs in Britain is the Glastonbury Zodiac. This is often kind of disregarded because some of the dikes and field boundaries and land packages were only set in place in like the 1920s or something like that. And then so people go, well, it's not real because it's not ancient. And I'm just thinking, who are those people who decided where those dikes were built? Because I want to know who they were. Because I reckon they knew that they were participating in building a Zodiac.
Yeah.
Just because it's new, it doesn't mean that it's not real. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's possibly an interesting place to start.
And what is?
Yeah, that's what thousands of years ago when they were making this thing on the map, the people that were making it were like, this ain't a Zodiac.
Yeah.
We're building it right now.
We're doing it right now.
It's not ancient.
Yeah.
What do you mean that's supposed to be the bull? No, it's not.
They didn't think they were writing scripture. They didn't think they were writing ancient texts.
Yeah.
Takes a while.
Yeah.
Before you realize, like, yeah, actually, you were writing an ancient text.
You never know which texts are going to become ancient.
Yeah. Every time you write
Now it's
something,
ancient. Oh, right.
Yeah.
just know it might be scripture one day.
Yeah. You could be the copper guy. You could become the copper guy. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a cool thing. See, there's kind of like a gap in the Zodiac here.
Yeah.
So here there's a place called Sengenith, and you go up a valley, and it's basically kind of like a blunt valley. Like you go up, it's steep, massive, like high ridges on either side, and then you get to it, and you're blocked off by another one, and the water sort of comes off there to form the river. And on top of there, Wilson and Blackett, the guys who found this, they reckon there was a mini Zodiac, right? And what you could do is, if you were in the right place and you were looking at a mound on the mini Zodiac, which you knew was, say, I don't know, Leo or something like that, you then be able to look through that mound, and you would be then looking out onto the larger Zodiac of the constellation that you wanted.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was the guide. It was the
mini map.
The mini map.
Yeah.
Yeah. They called it like a teaching area or something like that. But that's kind of like one of the places they started, and they started there because of stories from the Mabinogion, some of the later stories which involved Arthur, and descriptions of things happening on Sengenith Common. So it suggests that in that say 13th century story, that could have been contained authentic Bronze Age tradition concerning the location and the layout of the star map.
Wow.
I mean, it's fascinating.
But
That's cool.
is it also possible that Arthur was, now that we've discussed this possibility of like people having secret knowledge,
Yeah,
that he's actually one of those people?
absolutely.
Yeah. And so
Because
he
if the
rises to power, and he becomes mythological because he understood how to
Merlin.
harness. And Merlin, yeah,
Merlin did.
is obviously an expression of
the secret
esoteric knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's interesting just from a purely transmission point of view, if something was founded in the Bronze Age, and it managed to get to the 13th century AD. It had to pass through the time of Arthur, and this is exactly. I mean, this is. This area of South Wales is, I mean, I strongly associate with Arthur, but also we can look at various records which link Arthur to this area as well.
All right.
This is his turf, essentially.
It's Arthur's hood.
Yeah. So Ambrosius, the one who's part Merlin, he's found in a field. It's sort of described as a field in an area known as Glywysing, and this area here is Glywysing. It's known as Glamorgan today. And also, there's a very early mention of Arthur in a list called the Mirabilia, or the Wonders of Britain, and one of them's placed either in this valley or the next valley over. So we've got a couple of things. Even if you don't think Arthur's from South Wales, we definitely have early references connecting him and his dynasty to that area. So yeah, this could have Arthur could have well known about it. I mean, the suggestion by Wilson Blackett is that the Grail quest was to check on something that is hidden within the Zodiac, and that's why the hints are in these stories. For them, it was the Ark of the Covenant,
right?
Yeah. So, I mean, even I think Hancock says in the Sign and the Seal that there's a crossover between the Ark of the Covenant and the Grail. And that some people
they
talk
definitely
about
intersect
them interchangeably.
Yeah.
The other, I mean, this connection with the Middle East also sinks into another controversial aspect of British history, which is that the British are the 10 tribes of Israel, the lost 10 tribes. And this goes back a long time. Yeah. You know, there's kind of hints throughout this, throughout the tradition about this. And then, of course, the Grail as well is linked to the old idea of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. And of course, we've already talked about Jesus visiting Britain a couple of times. There's another character, Anna, cousin of the Virgin Mary, who appears regularly in the genealogies of the saints as well. I kind of talked about Arviragus' marriage to Claudius's daughter. She could have been a member of the Holy Family as well. It's a suggestion that's regularly made. So yeah, I think we can move on from the Bronze Age.
I was just thinking real quick that the Grail is the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, it's just the new version, right? The Grail is the Ark, the Covenant is the blood. That's the new agreement. This is the New Testament.
And you know what?
It's the same thing.
It's the cup of the covenant. Yeah.
The Covenant is also the Brit. That's the word for it.
What's
so
the
Britain
Brit?
is the land of the Covenant.
Oh,
no kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I mentioned it. Did I mention that?
No, I don't think you mentioned that. You were holding that fact back
holding that one back.
What about did I tell you about the Cymry? So the Cymry is what the Welsh call themselves, and the 10 tribes are called the Cymry.
No.
It's the same word.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So there's loads of stuff. I mean, that's there's
what is the old Welsh word for ark or vessel?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a dictionary.
Well, you do it the other way around, so I was just checking to see if you could go this way. Let me give you the definition, and you tell me the word. But that would be interesting to know.
There's a lady called Marshall who talks about a covering as being like related to this word, like a camber or a bend, and that's the cover or a roof. And like Cambria is the name of Wales as well in Latin. So
the roof would be almost like the dome of the sky.
Yeah, the roof of the world.
Yeah.
There's so much. I mean, when you start to play around with ancient languages and things, there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down, and some of them are more Some of them are more fruitful than others, should we say?
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Iron Age?
Right.
Oh,
Moving on.
no. A little bit more Bronze Age. Why would people from the Middle East come to Britain? They'd come for tin.
Oh, yes.
Of course. You know, bronze was 20% tin, and tin is a real rare metal. And in the southwest of Britain, you can find loads of it in a really high quality, really close to the surface. And just talking about change in archaeology in the Bronze Age, near where I live, we suddenly had a massive burst of buildings like this being built. They call them... So, they're on maps and stuff, they call them hut circles, which is a bit of a crying shame for such a stonking building, really. These are, you know, big orthostats of granite. They do 2 lots of them, and then they fill it with granite and earth. Yeah, there's 5,000 of these on Dartmoor, and Dartmoor also has huge tin deposits. So, you know, maybe it's a coincidence, you know?
it's for smelting.
Well,
Forges.
Unfortunately, they don't find a lot of slag, so that's...
Yeah, there would be evidence, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got like we've got bits here and there, but they don't find enough to really convince them that it was going on in a big way. But we'll do Bronze Age Dartmoor and tin mining another day.
All right.
Because there's a lot of that. So
that's a British hut. You're gonna build a hut. You need a load of giant granite blocks.
well, the funny thing is, so they call these hut circles that in the Iron Age, like a typical classic British house building is called a roundhouse, and these were generally made from timber posts. Sometimes they'd have a low stone wall, but nothing like this. And these predate Iron Age roundhouses by 500 years, maybe 600 years. You know, the circular building is a classic British design. You know, it was favoured for a long time in a lot of places, but these kind of stand out in the use of big granite blocks. Normally they're timber buildings, but so
Does it have an obvious? Do they have obvious entrances, or is it another thing where
I
it's
think there'll
like
be one that sometimes I think it was
right
probably
there?
around
Yeah.
here. I think it's collapsed in. They often have quite big doorposts either side, and they often make really interesting looking bits of granite for that as well. You can tell they've selected things, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Especially for the doorposts. We don't know how much of the other stuff would have been covered up. They like to think all of this is piled on afterwards, but sometimes the outside of the wall is also really nicely faced, and you think, why would they face a wall and then pile up stuff against it? I don't know.
Stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it seems odd, but not really sure. Right, Iron Age, great. So the Iron Age is really typified archaeology, but in archaeology, like in the landscape, this is by what we call Hillforts, and I've put it in inverted commas because, just like I said, the word Celt can get you in trouble with some people. So can the word Hillfort. Archaeologists generally like to call them hilltop enclosures or something like that these days. Yeah. Part of the problem... So the problem is... So the map on the left, this is like how many there are. Right, there's an insane amount of them. I think this includes promontory forts as well, but it's essentially the same thing, but on a spit of land out to sea. The problem is that someone will do some archaeology, find out what was going on there, and then apply it to every single one of these things. Right.
So one of them was a fort. Now they're all hill
forts. They're all forts, yeah. One of them was a town. They're all towns. One of them was a cattle enclosure. They're all cattle enclosures. And you get this time, and you'll find people who are on different sides of it, and some people are like, no, they weren't forts, they were cattle enclosures. Well, no. No, some of them were definitely forts, and some of them were definitely built in the Iron Age, and calling it an Iron Age hill fort is not inappropriate. Some of them are Neolithic burial sites where they start by digging these, they call them like causewayed enclosures, it's again another weird Neolithic monument where we don't really know what the hell they were doing or why. They have burials in them, but whether that was the original purpose or not, it's hard to tell.
Well, if you're building a fort, you're probably going to need burials.
Yeah.
You know,
Some people are going to die.
Yeah,
The thing
you
is-
dig a gigantic moat, you have a lot of dirt, and you probably are building a fort, and there will be dead bodies.
Yeah.
So what do you do with them? You bury them in the dirt.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that you don't know. So people were building things on hilltops throughout Europe in the ancient times. So if you think about all the classic Italian, the Roman city-states and all that, built on much ancient cities, or even, Athens, it's got that central, area, often built out of bloody polygonal stones as well. But ignoring that aspect for now, it's a little fortified town on a hilltop.
Right.
That happened all over Europe. It's a good way of defending yourself. But some of those sites, like for instance in Mycenae or something like that, they reckon there might have been something much more ancient and religious there beforehand. And then people kind of started living there, and then they threw up some walls, And I think that happened with a lot of our hill forts as well. You would have a
that makes
Neolithic
sense.
site or a Bronze Age site, and then it would continue in use. So I think the thing is with hill forts is that some of them could be a lot older, some of them aren't as old, but the problem is that on the surface they kind of all look like the same thing. You've got a hilltop and you've got ditches and banks. I put Maiden Castle, this is the bottom one on the right here, because it's an absolutely incredible example of, you've got this fortified entrance, snakes in, people are going to come up a lot of false entrances and 90-degree turns and things like 180-degree turns before coming back on themselves before they actually get inside. There's also many of these, although they just look like earthen ramparts, when you dig down there's actually sometimes big blocks of stone at the bottom. We find evidence of stone towers as well, things like that. Some of them were just farms, it seems. They don't find anything in the middle of them. Some of them were full-blown functioning towns with roads and layouts. Some of them seem to be just cattle enclosures. There's a couple which weren't even finished. You can see where they've started digging it out, and then it was never completed. So yeah, there's a lot of times that these could have been started and then continued or re-inhabited or abandoned. But
Yeah, does this coincide with like invasions or?
oh yes.
Yeah.
So the big building spree is in the Iron Age, about 500 BC. There seems to be a lot of these built or refortified, if it is an
Refortified,
older site or something. And the problem is that archaeologists say, unfortunately, we don't have any historical context for this. We don't know why this happened. Well, of course, if they just picked up a bloody history book, they'd be able to find out. Right? Can I stop sharing? Because we'll just talk
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I?
We can end it maybe.
May I? It was like, can I? May I? Oh no, we got the screen of death. Stop. Great.
There we go.
Yeah, so
They pick up a
500
history
BC.
book.
So the old name for Hillforts, so if the new name doesn't anger academics, the old name certainly would have. They used to call them Troy towns.
Troy towns.
Troy towns, in reference to the city of Troy. Because, so firstly, the snaking ramparts, there's something in British tradition about the Troy town represents a maze or a labyrinth, right? And Troy had these snaking walls that you had to find your way inside. But the tradition starting in the 9th century, or at least our earliest recorded version of it is in the 9th century in Nennius, which I spoke of before, this collection of histories. It speaks about Britain's founding. And again, we've got an eponymous story. It's led by Brutus. So Brutus is in the British story. He's living in Greece with his parents. Or I say, actually, he's not living. So his parents go to see an oracle, and basically the oracle says, "This guy's not going to be good. He's going to kill both of you." So they're a bit like, "Oh, we're not sure about this." First thing that happens is his mother dies in childbirth. When Brutus grows up, he's sort of adult age. He goes out hunting with his father and accidentally shoots his father. And immediately everyone's like, "Well, we should have known this was going to happen. The oracle said so. Get out." So he goes off to Italy and he finds a group of Trojan refugees who are basically living as slaves. And he helps free them. And then they sort of pop about the Mediterranean, finding other groups of Trojan refugees before heading out to this little island with a temple of Diana on it. And Brutus gets a vision that then takes him on to first into northern France and then from there into Britain. Always the problem has been with this is the dating of the Trojan War, because when historians of the past have tried to put Brutus in 1200 BC, or let's say 100 years after 1200 BC, because he's something like 3 or 4 generations down from Aeneas. He's like Aeneas's grandson or great-grandson, something like that. There's not enough monarchs between our historical ones and Brutus to fill in the gap back to 1200 BC. So one thing that a lot of the sort of alternative people in Britain have done is try to redate the Trojan War. So sometimes this is done by a complete Velikovsky-esque reordering of the entirety of Mediterranean history. And sometimes it just comes, just shifting the Trojan War a bit and 20 years of Egyptian history there, 10 years of Greek history there, Personally, I've had a new thought about this recently, that really we don't need to worry about redating the Trojan War for Brutus, because really the Trojan origins is a Roman issue. That's Virgil's issue. They said they were from the Trojans. That's their issue. Let them deal with it. Nennius doesn't just say any old Brutus. He names specifically Lucius Junius Brutus. Lucius Junius Brutus is a historical character who we can date to 500 BC. He is the first consul of Rome, so he's part of this Etruscan aristocracy. Rome's had their Etruscan kings. They're fed up with kings. They're doing all the horrible things that kings normally do. They want some sort of, republic, and they get first consul, and Brutus is the first. Lucius Junius Brutus serves as the first consul of Rome. In the Roman tradition, he fights some battles and he dies. And that's the end of Lucius Junius Brutus. But it's just really interesting to think that with our calculations of going back, with our prehistoric kings list, which isn't trying to be stretched back to 1200 BC, which is just built on its own realities, we get to this same date, which is around the time that Lucius Junius Brutus lived. And in his lifetime was around about the time that we had a big flourishing of Hillfort building in this country. It's also the time that the Latin, what they call the Celtic Latin material culture explodes in Britain. Latin is typified by Etruscan styles.
Huh. Okay.
This makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen a sort of modern iteration of this, right? Like you have a tyrannical, monarchical society for thousands of years, and everything stays roughly the same. There's not a whole lot of rapid advancement, and then like suddenly a major political upheaval happens and you get a republic, and then there's just this explosion of innovation and
change, yeah,
building and change and all of this, yeah, in a short period of time. So
yeah,
I don't know, seems legit.
And immediately following on, this is when we get stories of our first great lawmakers and road builders. Of course, all roads in Britain were built by Romans. There weren't any roads here before.
Well, that goes without saying.
Despite the fact that Caesar was beaten twice because of the Britain's use of chariots. But we didn't have roads.
Nah.
Obviously.
Well, they did bring the roads.
What's really interesting about Caesar's description of how the British used chariots, right? It was new to him and really frightened his soldiers because they'd never seen anything like that. People in the Mediterranean didn't use chariots like that anymore. They hadn't really used them like that since since about 500-600 BC or even earlier. And his description of the use of chariots is bang on Homer's description of the use of chariots by the Greeks and the Trojans in the Iliad. You have a chariot which has got a driver, and then you have the king or the general or whatever. Sometimes rides the pole in between the horses, or sometimes is on the chariot, and the chariot will come up real close to the lines. The hero will jump off, and obviously they'll be suited and booted in armor and decent weapons. They'll do a bit of killing whilst their driver supports them with arrow fire, and then when they get into a bit of sticky situation, chariot will rush back in, they'll jump back on the chariot and whiz off again.
God, can you imagine? Oh, God. Wild. I love that. That's great.
As well. There's King Arthur I talked about recently. He's even sort of alluded to in a poem as Emperor Nero might like it if he, or might not like it if he fell off his chariot pole. So it's referring to his into this art of riding the chariot, and it's something that British monarchs practiced. It's
so. Let me ask: is this this reference to the chariots being something new, but old to the Britons? Are you suggesting that they had a connection, or they learned from?
They continued riding chariots from their Trojan heritage.
Okay, they continued the tradition all the way through.
And chariot burials is also again a big part of Etruscan and Latin culture.
Because the other thing that happens is that technologies get lost, but then there's like relics, or there's writings or drawings, and somehow these are then revealed again later, and then people bring it back. So, that's what I was asking. Which one of these is it? You think it's a continuation?
No. I reckon they continued using chariots from this ancient period. They had a continued use of it. Whereas, say in Rome and Greece and stuff, I think because military technology moved on, they didn't have to deal with that sort of thing anymore. They knew about it historically, but it's just not the way they fought their war by that time. And then they came to Britain and they found people who were still fighting war in that way, in that fashion.
Well,
that's interesting that they never changed it or developed it over all that time.
Yeah, I think they continued. Chariot burials are a big part of this material culture as well.
I wonder if you can make an analogy to like U.S. Marines encountering Japanese officers with a sword.
Oh yeah.
Like, have you ever had a guy running at you with a sword? Now, this is not.
This is something by then was like long forgotten.
We don't fight this way anymore. But holy shit, it's scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh my God.
Yeah, shoot the guy with the sword first.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I like what you said about forget about the problem of when Troy was, because we can start the dating project from the other side and figure out that it all works.
Yeah.
The issue of when Troy was around is their issue. Like, this is your historian's problems, not on this side.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, it's not necessarily part of the story. It's Brutus onward is our part of the story. The Trojan War is something that happens earlier. I mean, I do like some of the ideas. One of my favourites is that around 700 BC, you get what they call the they used to call the Etruscans. They used to split up between the Villanovans, and then about after 700 BC, they called them the Etruscans. Now they kind of all call them Etruscans, but this period is known as the Orientalizing period, where basically their material culture completely changed, and what we think of as typically Etruscan started, and the Orientalizing period is sort of typified by Semitic, Middle Eastern styles, essentially. So there seems to be a big influx from the Middle East into northern Italy that causes this Orientalizing period. And the idea is that this is the fall of Troy, basically, in around 700 BC. That's also when you start to see recognizable scenes from the Iliad in Etruscan artwork and in Greek artwork. So I do like that, but as I say, I don't think we don't need to worry about that. We only need to worry about dating Lucius Junius Brutus, because that's who we're told in the first version of this story who Brutus is. You know,
All
so
right.
Yeah,
it makes sense to me. Yeah.
So should we finish up on a bit of Arthur?
Yeah. Finally. Back to Arthur.
I don't know. It's kind of a silly story.
No,
I have had so many chances for jokes that I have not wanted to do.
Dude, I was real hung up on the sandwich thing for a while. Because like you were showing the picture of like the 20 princesses that came, and I'm like, that's obviously
Where the sandwich came from.
sandwiches. I was like, I can't. You had already moved on. I was
Well,
like,
and the king, come on, the king that had he showed was speaking in the Senate. I mean, you know what that guy said, right? Let's not bicker and argue over who killed who.
So you've just reminded me of something, Russ, which I'm so glad that you did. If the Britons are Trojans and the Romans are Trojans, is that how Caradoc was understood in the Senate?
Ah,
that's a good one. Yeah.
that is interesting. Shit.
Although there seems to be a greater connection between Welsh and ancient Egypt, ancient Greek than.
Yeah, is that why they were here in the first place? Like, they knew of this ancient connection, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know.
Wow.
Right.
But they didn't build.
I
roads.
feel like I need to read books before we do the next episode. So I'm serious. Like I just, man, your history knowledge is awesome. Hat tip, oh boy. I don't know, I'm not wearing one, but still.
So that whole scene was it Life of Brian, where they're talking about what did the Romans ever do for us? This is all bullshit, basically.
Yeah,
you know, like
they didn't build
they
roads.
they list all this stuff. Well, you know, like sanitation and the laws and
No.
and the roads. Oh yeah, well the roads goes without saying.
Recent science has shown that they brought bed bugs to Britain.
Oh no.
So I don't know about hygiene and sanitation.
Yeah, hygiene, sanitation.
Yeah. So talking of sandwiches, I might do a couple of shit sandwiches. For so I'm not in the mind of ratting on people's work. A couple of people came up in the comments who were mentioned, which is Ralph Ellis and Graham Phillips, who are people who've done a lot of Arthurian work. Both of them are good friends with like Andrew Collins and Hugh Newman, who you've had on. So Ralph Ellis differs. He's kind of an Arthurian positive. He thinks he's a real person, but he puts them in as a first century. So King Jesus, the first century king of Edessa, is also Arthur. Okay. Now, I hope from a few of the things we've covered, and this is a real, this is why I will defend Ralph Ellis, is if people think that's like kind of an extreme idea, is that under the surface, ideas like that do exist in the context of the culture. there is this ancient link to the Bible lands. There is a link to first century Christianity, like early Christian, apostolic Christianity. There is a suggestion that Jesus came to Britain after the crucifixion. There is, all of these things are not in. I'm not saying that Ralph Ellis isn't original, but what I'm saying is that sometimes these ideas sound kind of extreme on the surface, but there is something reflected in the tradition that he's brought this from, and I think that's really awesome. And to not, even if it sounds kind of weird on the surface, there are strains and threads that he's pulled on which have very ancient roots and are very interesting.
Okay.
The third is that I don't necessarily to get for Arthur to not be a 6th century character, to be this 1st century character. Ellis has to then deal with these sort of early references to Arthur, which I believe place him quite firmly in the 6th century AD. And some of his readings and stuff are just not, I differ from that point, so there's a sort of starting point and he goes one way, I go another way. For instance, one idea is that there's no mentions of Arthur, so that mention that Gildas talks about Ambrosius Aurelianus, but he doesn't mention Arthur. So there's a reading by another historian, by Bede, is that there's basically like 2 or 3 very short, terse sentences which go along the lines of the Britons lost a lot to the Saxons until the time of Ambrosius. Then there were some victories for the Britons, and then there were some victories for the Saxons, and it was back and forth like this for some time. And then there was the Battle of Badon, which was a great victory for the Britons. Now, some people carry on through that idea of Ambrosius being in charge right through to Badon. And they say, well, Ambrosius is the leader of Badon. I'd advise anyone to just get a copy of Gildas and find those 3 sentences and see what they think. It's a very terse line of Latin. How you take to read it is up to you. Right. Me, from the almost immediate sources afterwards that say Arthur is the victor of Badon, I read it as Ambrosius was in charge, he had some successes, then later on, there was the Battle of Badon. And I think Arthur was the victor of it. So really, it's up to you. You get your copy of Gildas, and you have a look at that, or on PDF, online, and you see what you think about that, and you can decide for yourself if you think Ambrosius was the victor of Badon, or whether it could have been someone else, i.e. Arthur. So this is one of the ways that, and that's one of Ellis's readings, and it's one of, a lot of people have read it like that. As I say, Bede, who was a 9th century historian, he read it like that, and a lot of people have followed it like in that way. Another thing is the idea that we don't have, that a lot of our mentions of Arthur as a king come from the continent. In some cases, that's the case. It is true, we talked about the romances and where they're from and their sort of distribution across Europe. But I think also sometimes he's referring to documents that are from somewhere in northern France called Brittany. Now, I can give you one guess as to where Brittany gets its name from. They're called Bretons, the people who live there. This is part of the Celtic fringe, as it's known today as well. This is a Brythonic part of northern France. They speak a similar, well, some people, it's a dying language, unfortunately, but they speak a language which is very similar to Welsh and Cornish. It's kind of a good one. It's the only medieval kingdom, according to the mainstream, founded by immigrants and missionaries. So we've got 2 stories about the founding of Brittany, or we have a story that basically when a usurping emperor came out of Britain in the 4th century called Magnus Maximus, he took the Western Empire, but his soldiers from Britain settled in this part of northern France. And that was the beginning of Brittany. It slowly, more people came over throughout the centuries, but that's how Brittany started, with this sort of military movement. Now, modern historians don't like this story about him settling his troops here. What we do know is that in the 5th and 6th centuries, a bit later on, that a lot of immigrants fled Britain due to plagues, due to wars, and went to Brittany. And also a lot of what we call Christian missionaries or saints went over there as well. So they then say, well, that's when Brittany was founded. When these immigrants and missionaries went over. But you don't, in my opinion, you don't found a long-lasting medieval kingdom with missionaries and immigrants. You know, you need a firm basis to work from, and I think a 10,000 strong Roman army is a pretty good basis to start building a kingdom with. But also you get to the point where if we've got documents from here, this is still part of the British tradition. This isn't continental documents. You see what I mean? These are iconic documents. Okay, Brittany had its own politics and its own things to gain by writing, you know, which was separate from various other parts of Britain, but still essentially it's part of one culture's tradition. So that's just a couple of things that I differ from Ellis on. But as I say, I would defend him to the hilt in terms of the seeming strangeness of his research, because, as I say, those threads are found in the wider tradition. Graham Phillips is another one. Love Graham because he's an Arthurian positive. He's a 6th century Arthur guy. You know, he's fully on board with that. Where I think that Graham falls down is he identifies this one character. I think he's called Cunning Garwin, because in Gildas often gives people name attributes to describe them. He names 5 kings, but he sort of all gives them a sort of an animal title. And Cunning Garwin gets the title of the bear, or Arth. So Graham Phillips thinks that this guy, Cunning Garwin, Arth, is Arthur. I think that that's a bit of a stretch. I think it takes a lot of building up a lot of things that aren't in the documents to then kind of shore that idea up. And I think another thing that Graham falls down on is the something I mentioned at the beginning, which is the whole national versus regional thing. So Cunning Garwin we can locate in a very specific place in an area called Powys, which is in the east of Wales. It's a sort of a big, like, north-south long county which borders into modern-day England as well. And because of that regionality, I think that Graham then went, right, I'm going to try and locate loads of Arthur stuff in that small area. But again, now we have an Arthur, as one writer put it, with the range of a determined rambler. Which a High King of Britain you would think would have a much greater range. But yeah. But
do you think this name?
Graham
I'm
is a
sorry to
fantastic
side
researcher, and him and Ralph are brilliant. But that's just to for people who've sort of suggested them in the comments. That's just for me where I diverge from them.
All right, fair enough.
But
do you think? Do you think the name Bear, like in Arth, relates to the Great Bear constellation or the Big Dipper?
I am skeptical that in his own lifetime that connection was made. And
okay, because you just got done showing us like this really ancient star map culture. So I was hoping I was catching on to some special connection. But
no, in terms of the mythical Arthur, Kyle, in terms of the mythical Arthur, yes, I think that there is some sort of archetype, bear archetype, which is, you know, represented in the Zodiac, and I think that stories of Arthur have been associated with that and have been laid over the top. But in terms of the historical guy, whether he was known, whether that connection was made then as the bear or not, maybe not.
We had discussed last time that the round table was like this, was the Zodiac, and the bear is like in the center of it, spinning around.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
some
know, it's
people
the
say that
undying
Arthur-
stars.
Some people say Arthur had 12 knights, and so Ralph Ellis makes the connection with, 12 apostles, 12 disciples as well.
Constellations, yeah.
But Arthur's got a lot more than 12 knights. I mean, he's got
Yeah. So
knights.
this is sort of the almost like what we talk about the mythologizing of
Yeah.
this real story,
Absolutely.
turning it into something that can become immortal by placing it into the heavens.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing: is the mainstream view now on Arthur would be that he is mythology that's become historicized, whereas
As
my
opposed to the
argument
other way around.
With all those little people from Welsh tradition I showed earlier, again, they're historical characters who've become mythologized rather than the other way around.
Very nice. Okay.
So, and that's the thing I was saying.
Following
about
you now.
false
That's
oppositions.
great.
But we don't have to throw away the mythology, and we don't have to throw away the historical stuff. It's two
Right.
separate threads that we can follow that might in some places intertwine. And maybe the quest for the Grail was the quest for the covenant that's secreted in the Zodiac. I mean, maybe, but I'm just wary of people who like to exclude things. I like to hold. My philosophy is that I believe everything. I believe everything that everyone tells me, and then I slowly work it through my bullshit processor.
Yeah.
Right,
That's good.
Very,
I
like
very
that.
slowly. And nothing ever really gets thrown away. It just gets put on like the back burner, and then when something new comes in, and it gets checked against it,
Could be
and then,
revived, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's Bayesian reasoning right there. That's like it's all a matter of
Oh, I'm in good company.
the probability.
Oh, yeah, and your priors, yeah, like right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you adjust your priors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
And I know, I know that this concept of mythologizing someone who was real, like, I don't think there's any issue with that. Like, you're showing historical known examples of it, right? Mm-hmm. And not to keep bringing up fiction, but whenever we talk about that, I always think, of course, of Braveheart. They're like there's this fiction, right? But they're mythologizing him right there. They're talking about like he killed 50 men.
Yeah.
As if it were one. And like he's still alive, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening is there's
Tall tales.
right. Well, what's happening is that they're mythologizing him because this is part of it's part of like their nation building.
Yeah.
Like at the time,
Yeah. And
And
even,
it's like-
and it's taken forward with each incarnation because, like, for instance, in the movie where he's dirty and wearing raggedy clothes, William Wallace was an aristocrat. He would have been
Right.
very well educated and worn very nice clothes.
No, that's not William Wallace. He's covered in shit.
And where's William Wallace's family from? He's called Wallace. He's a Welshman.
he's a Welshman. Oh, okay.
I don't mean to anger the Scots. No, but at least his family name anyway comes from the fact that they were called Welsh at some point because of where they were from. Yeah, but which is obviously a very big part of Scottish culture because the whole of southern Scotland would have been some of the most powerful Brythonic kingdoms in the immediate post-Roman Empire. We have the Gododin as well, which have a very famous poem written about them. Who else? Oh no, it's too late. My brain's gone.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wanted to say about this mythologizing is that whenever you're consuming fiction about this kind of thing, whether it's that movie or other books that I read or whatever, they always the authors or the writers always depict this happening as, oh, look, it's the peasants who are just uneducated that are but it's not. It's like the Druidic people that are mythologizing them, and they're doing it with a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're turning this into a story of the heavens, of some kind of divine thing, and they do it. It isn't somebody making up shit. It's druids or people like that, people that have this esoteric knowledge doing it on purpose, like turning the whole thing into a kind of incantation, I think.
Yeah. I've come across this misunderstanding of oral tradition. It's that some people think oral tradition is just bedtime stories that get repeated and things added to them. They don't think of what a organized oral tradition would look like.
Yeah,
where people
exactly.
are actually they go through 20 years of study, before they can even do anything. And this is a really interesting thing that I can't even remember who it was, but it's an excellent explanation of how well oral tradition can work, is that when you're telling someone a story, I probably heard it on Snake Bros. If you're directly telling someone something, you can make sure they understand it, that they fully comprehend what you're talking about.
That's right.
When it's in a book, someone could take whatever they want from it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spell went wrong.
Tradition is more valuable.
Yep. I agree. That's again, this is why in the mythology of magic, the spell books are incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you have someone to teach you, then it can be structured in a way that's tailored to the student. Mm-hmm. But it's all, like plenty of times depicted that, some rando finds a book of spells and his shit is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
But it also makes me think of plays. So like, plays are an incredibly powerful way to tell a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, much more so than a movie as well, right? Like you can make the movie, but it's not real life. It's like it's like watching a band live versus listening to the album. Like the live is always just so much more impactful.
Yeah,
so
it's
like
present.
Not only is that in the oral tradition itself that you're like person to person, like being told a story, but then you take that oral tradition and everyone in the guild, perhaps, learns their part. And then you put on the oral tradition, acting it out in a play scenario. And then it's even like more, you can ingrain the essence of that story into everyone's in the audience's mind and they'll never forget it.
And I think that a lot of these organizations that have passed down this kind of knowledge, these like sort of, mystery schools, would do that in secret too. Like the members like come in and they
kind
would,
of referring to.
Yeah,
I'm referring to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you come in and to be initiated, you go through this like sort of pageantry, like a kind of
You learn every part of the play.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
it isn't performed for the public.
Right.
It's for the members.
You will be constantly confronted that the modern Druidic and Bardic order has absolutely nothing to do with the ancient Druidic and Bardic order. That is a very classic, typical opinion you'll come across, right? Written down very clearly in the Roman records, like Caesar's account, he says that the Druidic order is split into three groups: the Druids, the Bards, and the Ovates, right? Druids are to do with religious, philosophical matters. Bards was more historical stuff and stories, things like that. And the Ovates were to do with law practice. At least I think I've got that right anyway. Well...
Wait, the last ones were what?
Law, sorry.
Oh, law. Okay,
law, yeah.
Got it.
So, immediately, as soon as we start to get records and things written down, consistently in, let's say, the 10th century, maybe the 11th century, we know that the Welsh had bards still. They still had bards performing in their courts. And a lot of them would be referring to certain traditions which seem to have certain ancient roots and continuing the stories we've been talking about today, which we reckon have ancient roots. And that bardic, those bards, that bardic tradition, then went on to influence the revivalists of the 19th century, who created the modern order of Druids, Bards, and Ovates.
Wow.
So, in my mind, there isn't really an interruption of tradition. As far as we know, Bards were there in the 11th century. We assume they were also there in the 6th century, because we have recorded Taliesin and also Myrddin Wilt, who's the other Merlin character. Who's a northern bard. So why does the modern bardic order not represent the ancient bardic order if there doesn't seem to be an interruption of tradition? Now,
yeah. But is it only the bards that survived it? Like so they were able to like revive the entire like triumvirate, the set of three.
Yeah.
But were there druids and the other guys as well, or
I mean,
because I can kind of understand, because you're saying bards had to do with history, so they could carry the historical information forward and say, here's what the druids and these guys did. Let's reform the orders.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we'll end on this sort of interesting note, I think.
Okay, good.
So one is the one being a druid might be politically dangerous.
Yeah.
So one reason that people say that the continuation didn't, the tradition didn't carry on, is because all the druids were killed in Anglesey by a Roman general. Tacitus was there, or at least his father was there. Now, how do you guarantee that every druid in the country is on one small island? You can't.
Yeah.
Right. There's also a suggestion later on. So there's a story about a Scottish king, a Brythonic king in 6th century Scotland, who gets murdered by someone who seems to be suggested that is this druid. They use this term. What is it again? I can't remember what it is. Anyway, there seems to be suggested there's non-Christian magic practices as late as the 6th century, which we have established as definitely a Christian period. The other thing is that we don't really know the full form of this early British Christianity. And we don't know how it interacted with the pre-Christian culture. So when we get into these later periods, what is Druidic practices? What is Christian practices?
Yeah.
Can you draw a distinct line?
That's what I was thinking.
Can you draw a line?
That's exactly what I was. The Druids went Christian.
Yeah. You can go
because
to
Druidism, or whatever it's called, was like, a death sentence.
Yeah.
You can go to Peru.
Very interesting.
You can go Peru today and go to a Christian event where you can worship the Catholic saints and mushrooms and cactus.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can go and worship Christ and eat peyote in the Native American church.
Yeah, and I think it was in, maybe it's in Mexico or somewhere in Central America, like salvia is the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah. The priests chew the leaves, and that's weird.
The other point, if we're going to take it back a step further, is if the Britons were the lost tribes, the 10 lost tribes, how different would Druidism have even been from 1st century Christianity?
Yeah. Well, that depends. If they moved to the island and found some ancient magic, totally changed, and then built stars into the ground.
This is the suggestion with the Christ coming to Britain is basically
your descendants will be more numerous than the stars.
The Holy Family looking for somewhere where they could find people of their ilk, which was outside of the empire. Britain would be a great place to go for that. If those things were...
And they already had roads.
And they already have roads. Wicked chariots to ride around them. So,
fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's the end. No, is what is Druidism even?
Yeah, it's not like a nature worship thing. It's something. I mean, that may be part of it, but it's something like. I feel like it is something deeply ancient.
Definitely, I think they were definitely drinking from the same well as Plato, as well. Not Plato, sorry. The triangles guy. God, it's late.
Pythagoras.
Pythagoras, yeah, Pythagoras. I think there's definitely some.
Oh, okay.
I
thought you meant. I was like, wait, the giant triangles guy, or
a giant?
Who's the giant triangles guy? He's
Plato. I'm like, wow. So it goes all the way back to Atlantis. That's what I first thought. But he's basically saying, yes, if you can trace it to Egypt, because Pythagoras was trained in Egypt.
Yeah.
Then you could trace it All
there
the
were
way
a
back.
lot of Hebrews in Egypt as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe you come full circle. But as I say,
Wait.
these
Full triangle.
are full triangle.
There's only 3 turns there, bro. So now we're messing with him. He's
I know.
He's half
I'm
asleep.
sorry, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I have no idea what's going on.
Good stuff. Very interesting.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. This is great classic Snake Bros stuff there, man. Thank you so much.
That's all right. I just hope people get that there's lots of different ways that you can enter this. You can go balls to the wall weird if you want, or you can go through a pretty straight down the line historical way. You know, because even today, because of the mainstream opinion, even if you're a hardline Arthur historical 6th century character, you are still the lunatic fringe.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
you know, we might as well all be lunatic fringe together.
Yeah. We're all lunatics here.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have to have you on again eventually.
Yeah.
We'll give you a break.
Yeah, I think let's get through harvest.
Yeah, we
because
need to get through harvest.
It's not a good idea to book guests during this period
Yeah, because
of our
our
lives.
schedule is hectic. So we'll give you a break. We'll give ourselves a break, and we'll have you on again to do the let's do the bronze stuff, the 10, the ancient mines. I'm really interested in that. And
That's great stuff.
Thank you, bro.
But yeah, that took me a while to prepare that as well. So
Okay,
it'll be
cool.
good for a break.
So everybody that's interested in more things, check the show notes because Peter sends me links to other channels and resources and stuff. So I'll put all that in the show notes. And thank you guys all for listening and supporting the show. We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.
Thanks.
Snacks.